Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the North Carolina Botanical Garden and another Lunchbox talk. We're glad to have folks online with us, as well as a full room of folks. And this is a special day for me. It's many of you may have known, but if not, I wanted to share that I will be departing my position at the garden in just a couple of weeks, and just want to say it's been my honor and privilege to serve you through these Lunchbox Talk series and other programs and community engagement opportunities at the garden. Y'all are an amazing audience, and thank you for supporting the garden by participation, donations, volunteering, and all the ways that you support the garden. I just really want to thank you, and I'll still be around, but just wanted to really thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have a slate of programs all set for May and June and the fall, so keep coming. So I am Joanna Massey-Lalikas, and I'm the Director of Learning Learning and Community Engagement at the Garden. How many times have I said that? I messed up today. And in the back of the room, I have support for this through the coordination of David Michaud, and also supporting today Claire Lorch. And they'll be supporting our Zoom audience today with Q&A, and we'll have Q&A at the end of the program. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our special guest today, who you've seen here before. Georgann Eubanks is a writer, an Emmy-winning documentarian, and a popular speaker. She was born and raised in Atlanta and graduated from Duke University in public policy studies. And she's published poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and directed the Duke Writers Workshop for 20 years before launching the Table Rock Writers Workshop in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And with Donna Campbell, Georgann has created documentary films for PBS North Carolina through Minnow Media. She is a popular speaker on North Carolina history and literature and has served as president of several statewide organizations. She's also published in many magazines and journals, including Southern Culture, South Writ Large, Our State, and Oxford American. And she's given book talks here at the garden, as I mentioned, on her past books, Saving the Wild South and The Month of Their Ripening. Georgann now divides her time between Carborough and Little Switzerland and serves as the literary executor and executive director of the Paul Green Foundation. Georgann, thank you so much for being here. Please join me in welcoming her.
Well, thanks to Damon Waite and to Joanna and David for this opportunity to share this new book with you all. This is my 6th book with UNC Press, and they've been great to work with. And I'm gonna, got a little, I think we'll start with the Fabulous Ordinary book trailer so that you can see Donna Campbell's handiwork. This project would not be possible without her help. They're kind of hard to capture. So thank you, Donna. So these 15 essays, is this really a guidebook? That's what I do, is write guidebooks. And the photos are an enticement to get folks out to see extraordinary things in nature. And We started by going to see the swans down in eastern North Carolina, where they assemble when it's real, it's one of the darkest places on the East Coast. And the swans migrate from Greenland and Canada and, Siberia. Thank you, Donna. And so they come to North Carolina for a couple of months. And I thought, wow, that is such a thing to see. I wonder if we can find a dozen more in the South, in the region, that would give people a chance to appreciate nature, reliable, ordinary events in nature that you could take kids and grandkids to see. So that was the idea. What you see on the cover of the book is 500,000 purple martins that come to a specific island in a lake in South Carolina. And they roost on this tiny island every night in the month of July. And some entrepreneurial naturalists now take people out on pontoon boats to watch the sunset and see these birds come in. And I'll tell you, you wouldn't want to be on the island. But it's become a tourist attraction, and they've been coming since 1989, although one year they missed. And National Public Radio was there, and so they went to the Weather Service and tracked where they were on radar and found them at another lake in South Carolina. They've done the same thing at Mans Harbor in North Carolina, not quite so many, but in Mans Harbor, the Department of Transportation in North Carolina lowers the speed limit while they're there so that they're roosting under the bridge and they're trying to protect the birds. It's pretty great. So this gives you a sense of the scope of the project, 15 chapters. Some have multiple sites. We met a lot of people when we were doing Saving the Wild South at events like this, where I was a speaker and there were other naturalists there. And that was partly how I did my research to find these topics. Some of the chapters are do-it-yourself, so you can do them at home, like attracting moths or looking for lightning bugs or listening for owls and frogs. Today, I'm going to focus kind of on the botanical plants that are miraculous and they're pollinators, and then we'll take some questions, and then I'm going to read you a poem if I have time, because I also have a poetry book that's coming out. So Donna and I had been doing research in northern Florida for Saving the Wild South, and when somebody from the Florida Native Plant Society said, oh, you're going to be near the trout lilies, you need to stop in Whigham, Georgia. It's February. They bloom right around Valentine's Day. And so it was a chilly February morning, and we called a volunteer, and she met us and opened the gate and let us come in. But while we were there, the sun was coming up, and it was warming the land, and it went from this to this. That's what 30 acres of trout lilies looks like. The great story is that this expanse was preserved from development by a couple of guys who were real botanists in the area, and they worked very hard to raise the money. It was going to become a subdivision. At first, they wanted to just save the 30 acres, but they realized if it became a subdivision, these guys would be compromised. So the Trout Lily Preserve is a big spring celebration. And this is an area of Georgia where spring used to be celebrated by sending guys out to capture rattlesnakes, some of them dead, some of them alive, some of them caught by pouring gas in gopher turtle holes to get the snakes to come out, and then bringing them to what was called the rattlesnake roundup. Well, they don't do that anymore. Actually, they do have a rattlesnake roundup, but it's an educational session about protecting gopher turtles and rattlesnakes. And of course, it happens right after the Great Lily Festival. So they've been doing this now since 2009, and it's really a thing. People anticipate when is going to be the peak of blooming, and it's usually right around Valentine's Day. So every day on Facebook, if you're a member of the Preserve fans, you can follow how the blooms are going. And there are lots of other wildflowers there too that are fabulous. The little town of Whigham puts up these banners, And local restaurants extend their hours and gift shops extend their hours. And then in the off season, the volunteers carve these sparkleberry sticks, which is a native viburnum that grows in this area of almost to Florida. And they sell the hiking sticks to keep money, to build a shed and keep the property safe. But you'll have to read the book to hear the story of how they pulled it off. This quote from Barbara Kingsolver captures some of what's the philosophy behind this book. The moth settled onto the curtain and sat still. No human eye had looked at this moth before. No one would see its friends. So much detail goes unnoticed in the world. Moths we don't know as much about because they come out at night. There are a bunch more moths than there are butterfly species in this country. Most everybody's seen a Luna moth. It's a big thrill. But in North Carolina, we have upwards of 3,000 moth species and so much yet to learn, even as we are perhaps eliminating some with pesticides and other tortures. But you have to go out at night to appreciate their elegance. And we have only about 175 butterfly species. So moths present a wonderful challenge for people who are into it. This is Steve Rannells, a fellow from Pennsylvania that we met, an entomologist who's now retired. And he attracts moths everywhere he goes. He travels the world collecting pictures of moths, and then he makes t-shirts and posters from the pictures, and he lets the insects go. So we got some expert advice from him about how to attract moths at night. This is Dovey Lynch, and her daddy is an entomologist and a moth expert from North Carolina. And again, she became a moth fanatic because of her dad, and this is their setup with a blue light. Having a cloth at the edge of the woods is a good thing to do. Some people paint a sweet potion on trees and try to attract them to trees, but this is a great idea for sleepover with kids. And you get up about every 3 hours and go see what you attracted. So it's fun. This is my setup at my cabin in the mountains, and I put just a regular old light with a bulb, regular old light bulb, and a sheet over the window, and all of those are my captures. So it's pretty exciting. So since 2012, how do you say that? I'm confused now that it's 2025. The last full week of July is known as National Moth Week, but it's celebrated now in 120 countries. And people go out at night that week and see what they collect. It's a good time to catch moths. Now, you just take their pictures, and then in the morning, you make sure they get off the sheet, because you're just creating a bird buffet if you don't get them off the sheet. These are a couple of moths that just showed up in the mountains. One of these is the imperial moth here closest to me, photographed on a wooden deck by a friend of mine. And then this Polyphemus moth, the other one, just came in my car when I left the windows open and was sitting on my seat. And that's a big moth. It was so gorgeous. So these moths are all paintings by a woman named Deborah Davis, who Dovey's dad told me about, and I called her up and went to see her work. She lives near Charlottesville in Virginia. She puts out a light almost every night except for 2 or 3 months of the year, and she captures the moths, puts them in little Ziploc bags in her refrigerator so they calm down and sleep in the cold. And then in the morning, she takes them out of the bags and she photographs them, and then she paints them. This hummingbird clear wing, I think, is like a lobster. It looks like a lobster when it's flying. And I've seen it both at my cabin and in Carborough. These top 2 paintings I happen to own now because I love them so much. And this other one, the green one, made me think, how cool if you could print a big cape with a moth image. It would be a wonderful thing to wear, So anyway, Deborah is a very special friend now, and this is her car, Moth Art. She put the T on the end. The sentence that stuck with me from the University of Florida, where we also went, about 100 million years ago, a group of trend-setting moths started flying during the day rather than at night, taking advantage of nectar-rich flowers that had co-evolved with bees. This single event led to the evolution of all butterflies. So moths came first. So we went to the Florida Natural History Museum at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and we had a chance to visit the site of the largest collection of butterfly specimens on the planet at the McGuire Center for Lepidoptery and Biodiversity. And, that spider was kind of inspiring too. So this is Jarrett Daniels. He was giving a talk in Georgia where I was giving a talk, and he invited us to come to his butterfly research lab, where he is single-handedly restoring species of butterflies that are endangered. He raises them from pupa to caterpillar to butterfly in these cups, and he feeds them on Q-tips. That's Gatorade on the pink Q-tips. Now, Gatorade was invented at the University of Florida, so Jarrett's really proud of that, so is the university proud of him. And he said they liked fierce melon flavor the best. So the Schaus swallowtail butterfly pictured here was down to 4 individuals that Jarrett could find. And so his team brought it back from the edge and painstakingly transplanted eggs and from the wild to his lab. And now there are about 1,700 in the wild that he has transplanted back. So this is his work. He's a great guy. He took us out in the field to a privately owned ranch south of Gainesville, where the lab has monitored for 25 years the annual monarch migration. 2 generations of 2 different Florida families have supported this research project, and Jarrett and his team go out there and count the butterflies. They depend on Asclepias, a milkweed called Asclepias humistrato, which grows well in a hot climate. And in fact, the field where we went was full of cows and butterflies. Jarrett likes to remind the Florida legislature that pollinators, bees and butterflies and moths, are essential to the state's $8.8 billion agriculture business. So he works with the Florida DOT and has convinced them to plant milkweed and other host plants for native pollinators all along the roadsides. And it reinvigorates basins and is aesthetically pleasing to motorists, and it's been really successful. So he's a smart marketing guy. The cows kind of mow this place, and which improves the habitat. They keep the grass low, and it's also really good for aquatic life when the grasses are left to the frogs and alligators and damselflies who come through. We're not far here from the house of Marjorie Canaan Rawlings, the writer, near Gainesville, which is, her house is now a state park, and it's going to be in my next book. That's all I'll tell you. So this is Matt and Kristen, who are lab mates with Jarrett, and they're getting ready to do the census of butterflies. So there's Matt catching one with his big net, and he puts them, when he catches them, in little envelopes so that he doesn't count them twice, and then lets them out of the envelope when they finish the census. So this was pretty fun to witness. This is back at the lab, another one of Jarrett's teammates, Sarah Cabrera, and she's working with the Miami blue butterfly, which again is one of the most critically endangered in the United States. It's small, blue, and beloved by people who know it. In the wild, it lives on the beaches and tiny islands in the Florida Keys and the Great White Heron National Wildlife Refuge, but climate change and sea level rise are threatening the species. So Jarrett we've already said he's a smart marketer. Working at at the Florida Museum of Natural History, he sees every day how charismatic butterflies are to kids and to older folks who come to the museum to learn Florida's natural history. But he wanted to reach his own students, those 20-somethings who may not care about the importance of pollinators. So he came up with an idea of putting messages where these young adults would most likely see them, on beer. So he teamed up with the First Magnitude Brewing Company in Gainesville, and they've launched a collection of craft beers, each beer celebrating a butterfly or a pollinator. And in fact, in some cases, they have used pollen to help create the beer. Pretty heavy. Then they have an annual pollinator palooza and beer tasting, and they sell native plants and premiere the new beer of the year. This is also very popular with University of Florida Communications Department. This was their Reign Imperial Stout that restored the reign of the monarch, and the beer featured facts about the monarch butterfly on the big can, and there was a scannable link that would lead you to trigger an app with a 3D virtual reality butterfly while you're learning about monarch butterflies. And they're still doing a new brew every year. We really enjoyed this trip. We went to First Magnitude Brewing and tested several. So what Jarrett says we can do for butterflies is to plant a billboard. This is at my cabin. This is Monarda, bee balm, and there it goes.
Wow.
So it's fun to sit and watch, and that's when the hummingbird winged moth came in the daytime. So plant a billboard. Now I'm going to talk for a minute about forest bathing, another sort of horticultural chapter where we went to this most beautiful county in Virginia, high up in the northwest part of the state, thanks to our friend Wayne Stokes Goodall, who just celebrated a big birthday yesterday, and I hope she's watching. We went forest bathing. It's a Japanese practice to gain the benefits of forest air and light and serenity for healing. It can lower your blood pressure. This has been proven by Japanese physicians, improve your well-being, and you don't have to take your clothes off. This is Annetta Neighbor, and she's just published a book about the plants that she grows and their healing powers. She was born in Germany and trained as a psychotherapist. She left DC, and she runs this retreat with her husband as an education center, and they have a camping area for people on motorcycles. They grow grapes and vegetables and fruit trees and herbs and plants and edible flowers. And so she was our guide to forest bathing. As we started walking toward the forest, Annetta explained that in the 80s, Japanese business people were working themselves to death. You may remember the era when the Japanese economy just took off. And people were really getting sick. And so in 1982, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries coined the term forest bathing. And people started going out and spending an hour a day in the forest and reaping great benefits. It seems sort of complicated when you read the medical literature, but Donna met a 5-year-old who had just done forest bathing in his kindergarten class. And she said, "So how does it work?" He said, "You go out in the woods and you sit until something happens." It was fun. Shinrin yoku is what it's called in Japanese. So I know it looks like I'm answering a phone call, but I'm actually taking a picture of some moss here. And forest medicine is now a new interdisciplinary science that belongs to both environmental and preventive medicine. And it's good for the autonomic nerve system, the immune system, and the endocrine system. So they say, get out in the woods and you will be changed. This is Christine Fry. She was a Bennington undergrad who was interning at Emerald Farm that summer. and she's originally from Memphis and went on this forest bathing experience with us. And I called her a year later as I was writing this chapter, and she was in Japan. She had gone to Japan and spent the summer and just got in deeper to the whole cultural thing. We learned that oxygen levels are higher in the forest because of the working of the trees. So, and there are certain trees that, like pines, spruces, and cedars, and even oak trees that give off phytoncides, which trees produce and to protect themselves from insects, and it's good for us to be exposed to that as well. So Christine found this chicken of the woods, and we were delighted with that. And then the moss really got my attention. Donna collected some of this turquoise fungi, which was really interesting. So you can find things to keep you quite occupied in the woods. And of course, this was a lovely forest. And Netta invited us to do a tree sit, which means you find a tree and you sit next to it. And you think about what the tree's life is like, being immobile, standing in this place, and all the things, animals and insects that come by, what it must be like to live in one place and pass through the seasons for so many years. And I imagined, what it would be like to have these visitors on your skin. It's a little weird. Those long, lonely nights with the fungus. So we came out of the forest and to the top of the hill, and we talked about what we'd experienced and decided that it was really a good thing, especially after COVID had been so hard on us all, and the idea of getting out in this most extraordinary county in Northern Virginia was fabulous. I realized after my forest bathing experience that now when I see a clear-cut place, I get really upset. So Walt Whitman, one more chapter, and this is kind of, I said at the beginning that photos of lightning bugs were hard to get, but I want to share a little bit about the chapter on dismalites. Dismalites, they are a miracle. So they're a kind of glowworm. They show up on wet rocks and in caves. They live in moss. They're no bigger than a grain of rice. And there's this place in Alabama that reminded me of Rock City and Ruby Falls in their way they advertise. It's like, you have to see these amazing glowworms in the dark. And they've fashioned a gate and fencing around this place that makes it seem very forbidding. They have lights that flicker. They have this horrible fence there. And so it was like old showmanship, felt like the 50s. The gates were really forbidding. So we went one afternoon with our friend, Lisa Buck from Alabama, and the first thing you do is you go in this store where they sell ice cream, sandwiches, candy, t-shirts that say Dismalites on it. And the lady at the desk takes your money, you sign your life away on a release form, and then she gives you a handmade map of the canyon, and then you go out the back door. We have the last primeval forest east of the Mississippi, says the canyon's resident biologist, whose name is Brittany Slappy McCaffrey. She has been featured in National Geographic talking about the glowworms. What that means, she says, is that our forest has never been touched by axe or fire, so it's all old timber, and it's almost impossible to get down there with any kind of machinery for farming or lumber. So we go out the back door, and there was a big deck with some boards missing, with traffic cones so we wouldn't get near them, and caution tape in several places. And at one time, there was a swimming pool, which was drained and looked a little scary. People have been coming here for, well, centuries, if you can't count the native people. And so the stairs and deck were kind of my first apprehension. And then, of course, our first view was of a snake there, and also an armadillo walking around, and just drippy moss everywhere. It was spooky and spiritual both, I would say. The presence of the ancients was kind of palpable. There were rocks and roots on every path. You had to be really careful hiking through here. So not long after we were down the stairs and on the path, we saw this caution snake den sign. And I'm like, oh, great. Well, it turns out, we asked the lady when we got back, what was the snake den? And she said, oh, that's just to keep people out of there because there was a vulture nest. They could have said vulture nest, you know, I would have stayed out. So see all this moss, right? This is our friend Lisa and I looking up. These glowworms, if you just read their website, you think they're only there, but they're actually at Anaruby Falls in Georgia. They're at Hazard Cave and Pickett State Park in Tennessee. They're in Highlands. I saw them in Grandfather Mountain later, and they're even in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. But anyway, we were, just, okay, we'll follow this path. But the glow can be difficult to spot if you're just out in the woods. The thing is that in these strong, wet moss banks, they're easier to find. So again, their light is almost microscopic. But of course, we're risking our life walking on these terrible paths. There was actually a crew of 3 teenagers who were sweeping the rocks ahead of us. I think we were probably the only business that day. 2 hemlocks had toppled. One of them had been a champion tree, the largest in Alabama, with a 50-foot spreading crown, but it had gotten walloped by an ice storm. And I looked recently, and they had a terrible ice storm last year too. So the place has to be taken care of after these events. So Northwest Alabama was part of the Chickasaw domain and for thousands of years. And the native people lived here, was their sacred home, and then they ceded their land to the United States in 1818. Andrew Jackson's army rounded the Chickasaw people up and brought them here to Dismal Canyon and kept them under the Indian Removal Act for 2 weeks, and then they were marched off to Muscle Shoals and joined on the Trail of Tears. But this is a formidable prison, this place. If I look a little creeped out, I was. The final thing is we were just about to come back up those rickety stairs. On the map, there was this swinging bridge, and the lady had told us, yes, Sean, the lady had told us, don't get on the swinging bridge. So of course we didn't. It went into some dark hole. We weren't going in there. So what I haven't told you is that this was our first hike just to take pictures. We were going to have to come back and do this again in the pitch dark with infrared lights to see the glowworms. We were a little nervous. We went out for barbecue. We came back and the gates were closed. And there's those flickering lights, and there was magnolia, macrophylla, those plants that have 3-foot leaves all around in the woods there. And we waited for our guide to arrive and unlock the gates. You can pay for a daytime hike or a nighttime hike or both for a discount. And it's gotten kind of expensive now. But this is our guide. His name was Bill. And by day, he built mobile homes. And at night, he guides scores of people through the canyon. He's been doing this for years. His pockets were full of red flashlights. There were only 6 of us. He gave us our flashlights. And we went out, and it was really dark. And we went down those rickety stairs, which made the water that was flowing seem even louder. And when we got to the bottom, Bill told us to turn off our flashlights. So he headed down the path. And the next thing we knew, we heard him hit the ground. Whoop! He fell. And he said, oh, I face planted. The first time I took Boy Scouts on this tour, I just don't take as many people now, but I'm okay. Keep your flashlights off. Stay in a line, follow each other. And we went through these narrow, dark passages. And anyway, his fall did not boost my confidence. He shined his light to show us a 1,000-leg glowing on a rock. And I thought, oh, so this is what's crawling around us that we can't see. So we forged ahead. So this is supposed to be dark. We stopped at a big rock wall. This is from the book. He shut off his light and asked us to make a quarter turn to the left and face the wall of rock beside us. He said to not turn on our flashlights and to shut our eyes and count to 30. It felt odd and intimidating to be standing with a group of strangers in a foreign dark, eyes closed, with creatures crawling on the rocks in mind's eye. I breathed and counted slowly, sensing the others around me doing the same thing, but I felt dull, as if ready for sleep. At Bill's eventual prompt, we opened our eyes, and there they were, tiny pinpoints of light covering the rock wall, top to bottom, and dotting the landscape at our feet. People whispered exclamations. The ones down below are lightning bug larvae. These up here are the dismalites, Bill said. We stood frozen in awe. Looking at them straight on is elusive, Bill said. Use your peripheral vision if you know what I mean. You'll see more. We sort of side-eyed. We remained quiet. Fear fell away. The lights were tiny but undeniable. Then I looked up, and the night sky above us was clear, star-studded. The points of light were continuous from ground to rocks to sky. Wow. It felt like we were in an airplane flying over a big lit-up city. Then someone noticed occasional lightning bugs flashing over our heads in the trees. We waited and watched for them. The effect was uplifting. So then we made our way. We said, we're almost done, but we're going to go in this part, look some more, and then go across the swinging bridge. The guys were behind us, the other people. There were two couples, and these guys were big. And so Donna and I went first, ladies first, on the bridge. And then one of the guys, he said, one at a time on the bridge. Well, the guys got in a hurry. So we got to almost the end, and this guy stepped on the bridge, and Donna and I both flew up just like a cartoon. So it wasn't until I got home that I discovered that these dismalites are actually called Orphelia fultoni, and they're a carnivorous species of fly larvae. It's the only bioluminescent species of dipteran fly found in North America. And the guy who found them was from NC State. He found them, he was an expert on katydids, and he was spending the summer near Cashiers in Glenville, where that lake is now, before the lake flooded the area, and they were behind his house, and he collected them and brought them back to a colleague, but they all died the first summer. And then he collected some more and kept them cooler and brought them back, and they figured out what they were and gave them a name. So they're named for Bentley Ball Fulton of NC State in their Latin version. And Alan Kressler, who is a photographer who's generously shared his photos with us before, I think this picture sort of, there's more light in the picture than we had looking at them, but it gives you a sense of what they look like. So the other chapters deal with birds and fireflies and purple martins and bugling elk and other things. And isn't Donna's photography great? So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Were the lights, do they move? Are they flickering or?
No.
No.
Mind repeating the question, please?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'll come around with a microphone.
Do the lights move?
Yeah.
No, they're ensconced in the moss, and Bill, our guide, said, I'm gonna shine this light right on that one right there, and it'll shut off. And it did.
Other questions in the room? If we have a question online, please post it in the Q&A, and David will help to moderate that.
Nancy.
If you could spend all 4 seasons in one of these places you've been, which place would it be?
My cabin in the mountains. Honestly, You know, Florida in April was gorgeous, seeing the this spring-fed river and, you know, all the birds and mammals and, but I wouldn't want to be there all 4 seasons.
Any other questions? David, do you have any online? Okay.
I guess I covered it. Well, I'm going to read you a poem from my new collection. It's called Rural Astronomy, and then we'll be done. These are poems that I've kept in the drawer for 40 years and finally pulled them out and had somebody help me put them in order. And these poems resonate in a lot of ways with the book itself, the other book. This one is called Sightseer. If you look back carefully, there's a good chance that what you've become is really what you've been all along. Take me, for example. It's not possible to say for certain when I went from being an amateur to a professional sightseer, from dilettante to expert tourist. I was in 2nd grade when the guide passed me his ever-ready flashlight deep inside a Tennessee mountain. We'd already seen 7 states that morning, and now we were a knot of families in the dark, heading toward the so-called Ruby Falls. I'd won the flashlight because I could explain the difference between stalactite and stalagmite. Not much different in my child mind from new teeth, top and bottom, sprouting in my own mouth. So began my fact collections and the first lure of leading a group of strangers somewhere exotic, even if falsely lit by ruby-colored lights.
Georgann, thank you so much. That was so inspiring, such wonderful
Oh,
information.
there we are.
Oh, hello.
I don't want to watch that.
So Georgann, we have Georgann's book in the garden shop, and she's going to be staying around to sign and chat with you all afterwards. So please join her over in the plant sale area, right outside the garden shop.
But before you go, before you leave,
All right.
hi, I'm Damon, garden director, and I have a really important announcement to make. Some of you may already know, but Joanna is leaving the garden. May 18th is her departure date. And for reasons, personal reasons, farm, friends, family, her art, which she's wearing around her neck and is available in the gift shop. And, you know, Joanna's been exceptional in every possible way as our director of learning and community engagement. I could just start listing all of the innovations that she got us through the pandemic. She created the hybrid program here so that our last Sims lecture, over 500 people from around the country participating, just incredible contributions to the garden. And has been, you know, my partner in thought. She leads with her heart. I don't have any empathy, but I get it from her and pass it along. So she's been fantastic. But there's really few people I know who can match Joanna, her selfless nature and her drive to make the world a better place. And we are really, really going to miss her. I wanted to come and tell the Lunchbox crowd, because I know a lot of you are regulars and you come to a lot of them, so you've been seeing her over the years. So let's just give her a big standing ovation.
Damon, thank you very, very much. And yeah, it's been an honor and privilege to serve you all, and so grateful for you all and all you contribute to this wonderful 3rd place. You know, are y'all familiar with the idea of a 3rd place? That you have home, you have work. Some of you don't have work anymore, but this is a 3rd place that's special to all of us. And I look forward to being my 3rd place in the future too. So I'll see you in the audience. Thank you. And Thank you so much for being here, and what a special last Lunchbox talk for me to see Donna's beautiful photography and your beautiful presentation and perspective on nature in this special place in the Southeast. Thank you again. Y'all have a wonderful day at the garden.